In this module, we are going to discuss about what do we mean by the concept of nation, how a nation is constituted, what are the main ingredients which enable a social group to be identified as a nation. And there in this module, we are going to also discuss that how when India became independent, there was so much emphasis on nation building, because the constitution makers as well as our political leadership who led us in the nationalist movement, they were very much aware that unlike the Western countries, in India we had many nationalities, we had many linguistic groups, we had many religious groups, we had many tribal people and the tribal identity groups, and we had the caste factor also. So there were so many divisive factors which were working, and there were so many social categories which could be identified on several bases. So in India, like, identity has been always very fluid concept. Like, people carry multiple identities. Somebody can be in the majority on the basis of the language. The same person can be in the minority on the basis of his or her religious identity. So to determine who belongs to minority or who belongs to majority is a very difficult task in the context of India. Likewise, the social divisiveness or the social cleavages are always prone to be exploited for the electoral purposes by the people who do not really are democratic in their orientation. So as a result, when India became independent, it was a huge task how to achieve national integration. Because as you know, one of the dominant concern of the constitution makers was to ensure national integration, to inculcate in the consciousness of the people about the belongingness to the same nation state or one nation state. So there you had this issue about language, you had the issue about the territorial disparity in terms of economy, and you also had a problem about the princely states integration into independent India. So all those factors played a very important role, and there were so many forces which were inimical, which were detrimental to the rise of a national consciousness, to belongingness to the same nation. So as such, we can see that in this module we are going to discuss all those factors. Like, first, as I said, we would discuss what do we mean by nation and how nation can be dubbed as a kind of a imagination of the people, the time and the space people when they feel that they belong to the same nation. So feeling of belongingness. After discussing the concept of nation as it has been theorized by different political theorists, in this module we are going to come to the Indian context, and we are going to see, like, when India became independent, and even before that, when we were having our nationalist struggle for independence, for decolonization, there was so much concern about how to build a common feeling of belonging to one nation. So how to turn the cultural nation into a political nation. That was the real challenge before the political leadership as well as the constitution makers. So that was our great challenge. The objective of this module is to explain the concept of national integration, and also it has to refer to the causes of disintegration and promotion of national integration despite all those challenges which are there causing the forces of disintegration to come up in a big way. So in this module, what we do is that we basically refer to the way the nation has been constructed, and we ask the question, like, what is a nation? Is it a natural entity? Is it a psychological feeling? Is it an ideology? Does the nation exist from the time immemorial? Were these nations in the world before, say, 17th century, or it's a kind of a post-17th century phenomena? When and how did various nations come into being? Were they invented or were they built? When we refer to writings of Benedict Anderson, he defines nation as an imagined political community. That is to say, all members of a nation never get to see, meet, or interact with all their fellow members. Yet they think or imagine that they are members of one community, that is, nation. For example, a villager in Kerala may not have visited any place outside Kerala. She may not have met any individual from the other parts of India. Yet she is able to imagine that people residing in Kerala, Maharashtra, Orissa, Mizoram and Himachal Pradesh are all members of the same nation. A nation is defined here as a community because it is always conceived as a deep horizontal comradeship. Integration or national integration, as it is often called, is a process of developing this comradeship, a feeling of unity among the members of a nation. The process of national integration is closely connected to the projects of nation building as well as state formation. It is a process common to most of the national states. Now, when we refer to the constitutional framework to define nation, we can see that integration refers to coming together. It is a process whereby people living in an area develop a feeling of a sense of a community. No nation is culturally or ethnically homogeneous. People speaking various languages, professing various religions, belonging to numerous cultural and ethnic groups reside in every nation. Integration is the process of total or partial merging of these communities, groups, people into one nation. It means subordinating one's linguistic, religious, regional or cultural identity to the national identity. For example, one would say, I am an Indian first and only then a Sikh, or my primary identity is Indian, then I am a Bengali. So one can privilege the national identity first and then one can invoke one's regional or the local much immediate identity. It is important also to note that the diversity, pluralism or presence of multiple communities within a nation are not necessarily prone to balkanization, secession or disintegration. Diversity enriches a country. Diversity may lead to conflicts, but they are not necessarily impediments to national integration. Secondly, integration does not mean smoothing out all the diversities or crush identities other than the national identity. Myron Weiner presents a range of meanings attached to the term integration in his article Political Integration and Political Development. Firstly, integration refers to the process of bringing together culturally and socially discrete groups into a single territorial unit and the establishment of a national identity. There are multiple groups characterized by various languages, religions, and cultures within a nation. They may or may not be coterminous with territorial units of a nation. For example, in India, the Telugu-speaking community is more or less coterminous with the Andhra Pradesh. On the other hand, Christian communities spread all over the nation. Now, a Telugu-speaking person might identify herself with Telugu community and a Christian with the Christian community. Integration means subordinating one's identity towards linguistic, religious or cultural communities to the national identity. In simpler words, one might say, I am first an Indian and only then a Telugu or a Christian. This type of integration is termed as national integration by Myron Weiner, a noted American political scientist who was teaching in Princeton University and who has done a commendable work in the field of Indian politics. We can also refer to another factor. when we think about integration and the nation and the national identity and the nation becoming a kind of a political community. The term integration, we can consider, denotes a problem of establishing national central authority over subordinate political units or regions which may or may not coincide with distinct cultural or social groups. Various states in India, namely Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, are political units or regions in India. Integration also means establishing that all these regions, states, are ultimately ruled by one central government. While in previous meaning of the term, emphasis was on integration of cultural groups, in this definition, the emphasis is on territorial units and establishing authority. This type of integration is termed as territorial integration by him. The third, and this territorial integration is referred by Meyer-Wiener. So we are discussing the Meyer-Wiener concept of integration. The third sense of the term, which is described by Meyer-Wiener, is elite mass integration. That is, bridging the gap between the rulers and elites and the governed masses. So the gap between the political class, which is in the position of power, and the masses, the ordinary masses, if there is a kind of a gap being narrowed down, that also leads to greater level of integration. While Meyer-Wiener also refers to integration, meaning that there is a minimum value consensus necessary to maintain a social order. So there should be a general consensus on foundational values which govern the society and the economy in a given nation. Only then you can have a national integration. Finally, integration or integrative behavior, as he calls it, Meyer-Wiener calls it, refers to a capacity of a people in a society to organize for some common purpose. In spite of the cultural social differences, people belonging to one nation may unite for a common goal. For example, the spirit of oneness shown by the people in time of war. So in time of crisis, in time of a natural disaster, or in times of war, if the people behave in a manner that we are fighting, we are struggling to overcome the same common problem, then it also brings people together and strengthens the feeling of a nation. Meyer-Wiener maintains that the problem of integration or holding the political system and society together is felt more in the developing societies than either modern or traditional societies. He argues that in a developing political system, the political leadership or people aspire to expand the functions of the system. That is, the government undertakes new tasks and functions. To carry out these new functions, a new level of integration, togetherness, unity is called for. For example, Wiener explains, colonial regimes permitted only limited political participation by people, but the independent new nations permit a great public participation in politics. This is an expansion of the functions of the political system, giving more space to the common masses, and it requires obviously much more integration of the people to include them in the political processes. Therefore, the question of integration arises in such a nation. Now, when we refer to India, how in the context of India the national integration has been defined, there we can refer to the concept of unity and in diversity. Kochari Commission, which was basically established, constituted to to suggest reforms in the educational sector in 1964, defined it thus. By national integration, we understand as oneness of India and Indians, despite the fact that we belong to various regions, speak different languages, and profess faith in numerous religions, we are one. In the National Integration Conference of 1961, it was also referred by Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, our second President of India, he argued that the national integration is a psychological and educational process involving the development of a feeling of a unity, solidarity, and cohesion in the hearts of the people, a sense of common citizenship, and a feeling of loyalty to the nation. Now let us discuss integration as an aspect of modernization and development. In 1950, the theories concerning political development and modernization evolved in the discipline of political science, especially in the subdiscipline of comparative politics, where one referred to the area studies focusing on the Asian, African, and Latin American countries which had become independent after Second World War. The liberal modernization theory distinguished characteristics of traditional and modern societies and gave an account of the process of modernization, transition of traditional society to modern societies. Samuel Huntington, in his article The Change to Change, lays down the characteristics of the process of modernization agreed upon by the scholars. One of the important features of modernization, as he pointed out by him, is that modernization is a homogenizing process. Modernization produces tendencies towards convergence among the societies. Modernization involves movement towards an interdependence among politically organized societies and toward an ultimate integration of societies. National integration is one of the central characteristics identified with political development as well as observed by Huntington. It was usually assumed in the theories on political development that a developed polity must be a nation state. Therefore, nation building or national integration was considered as a key concept of political development. Thus, integration is also defined as a rationalizing process that is necessary for development, adjusting the traditional to the modern, the greater to the lesser traditions, and smoothing the path of modernization. Now, let us discuss how can we adopt measures which can achieve helping national integration. So, how is national integration achieved? Meyer-Wiener describes public policy strategies which are generally employed for the achievement of national integration. The governmental policies aimed at integration may have an assimilationist approach or unity in diversity approach, according to him. Assimilationist policies aim at the elimination of the distinctive cultural traits of minority communities and the construction of a national culture, which is usually culture of the dominant cultural group. The second type of policies is that of unity in diversity, establishment of national loyalties without eliminating subordinate culture. In practice, it is notified that the states generally pursue policies that involve element of both of these policies. Anthony Burch points out to various steps taken by the government to promote national integration. He classifies them into two categories: direct initiatives to foster integration and reactive measures to minimize political effects of social and political cleavages. In the first category, he includes creation of symbols of national identity such as flags, anthems, sports team, national airlines, etc. Socialization through education system. Establishment of political institutions representing all sections of the society, that's also very important. The presence of different communities in the lawmaking bodies, in the national executive, these all are symbols. Efforts to ensure economic welfare of the minorities, that is also very important to ensure national integration. In the second category are included policies like unsegregated schools, legal ban or on ethnic discrimination, etc. Burch shows that the national integration is not merely an outcome of public policies. It is partly a byproduct of other social and economic developments too. He calls the latter as social mobilization, which is, according to him, the process by which industrialization induces workers to leave their native villages so as to seek work in the new industrial area, thus eroding the social communities of rural areas and mobilizing the workers for absorption into the larger national society. One can also say national industrial society. He also recognizes the role of means of transport and communication and mass media in the process. Thus, Birch stresses on the role of technology and industrialization in the integration process. Problem of integration, or you can say disintegration, in India. So what are the disintegrative vociferous forces, the divisive forces, or the sectarian forces active in India? The anti-colonial movement, as we all know, it led to the emergence of nationalism despite all the diversities which inform the Indian society. And India was never a nation state in a political sense, it was more a nation state in a cultural sense, as many theorists have argued. In the colonial India, however, there was a major problem, and that was in the form of Hindu-Muslim divide, which resulted into the partition of the country and the centrifugal forces created by 10 major languages, each entrenched in its own historic territory, numbering speakers in the tens of millions and wedded to different time-honored script. That was also a great problem as far as the process of nation building was concerned. They were basically all these factors: the Hindu-Muslim divide, the linguistic issues, and then the demand for new states. They all were seen as a great challenge to the process of construction of new nation state. As Selig Harrison, in the writing in the late 60s, suggested for Nehru, the major threat to Indian nation in the post-independence period were not from outside, but were from within, and hence he always appealed above all for national unity. In fact, Nehru was also very conscious, and other political leaders were also very conscious about the need to have national unity and integrity. The foremost threat to India's national integration are identified as communalism, linguism, and regionalism. Language, region, the construction of a region in a narrow sense, and the religious divide. They all are important. Now let us look at them one by one. Communalism, when we think about, the colonial rulers of course played an important role in heightening the communal consciousness and communal stereotypes in India. It was during the British rule that the communal schemes in the communal divide in medieval India were emphasized, and the communal identities were concretized. A kind of history was written which underlined the divide between the Hindus and the Muslims. The nationalist and the anti-colonial sentiments culminated into the revivalist thinking in some cases. Thus, the newly emerged nation was plagued with divisive forces of communalism, which further grew after the independence. As Joe Hassan has argued, communalism has served a function by a kind of a negative function by diverting attention from the objective condition of the systemic crisis and its implications. Instead, people tend to accuse the other community for all their troubles. So, in a way, communalism has helped in shifting away the attention of the people from the substantive issues and has really encouraged them to accuse the other communities for all the ills which afflict our society. So communal ideology has also led to communal violence, communal riots, and India has witnessed many smaller and bigger communal riots from time to time. It has been a part of our political history, even after independence, even after the partition of the country. It's all started in the 60s itself. We can also refer to linguism, that India being a multilingual society, language also has been a factor which has come in the way of ensuring national integration. Indian citizens, including those belonging to linguistic minorities, have right to instruction in their mother tongue. Linguistic diversity and people's love for their mother tongue is not problematic. What is problematic is linguistic chauvinism, incidents of beating up people hailing from other states and speaking different languages. Imposition of a particular language on the other linguistic communities, whether by government or by dominant linguistic community, often creates ill will. The efforts of the central government to promote Hindi as the official language were met with resistance in the southern India in form of Dravidian movement. Like Dravidian movement also asked for creation of a separate Dravida land or Dravidistan. Linguism is closely related with regionalism and casteism, since in many cases, especially in the non-Hindi speaking regions, language area coincides with the state boundaries after linguistic reorganization and caste structure. We can also refer to regionalism. Regionalism has taken a number of forms in India. Emergence of regional political parties invoking narrow regional sentiments, separatist movements, demand for greater autonomy for states, interstate disputes on various issues including river water and boundaries, anti-migrant agitations along with demands for preference to be given to son of the soil and so on. Disparities in regional development is one of the key factors giving rise to regionalist sentiments in different parts of India. Apart from these, a number of other elements have caused serious threats to integration, including casteism, rural-urban divides, socio-economic inequalities, which are based on region and all. So that's why we have this National Integration Council. The constitution makers and the national leaders were concerned about safeguarding the unity and integrity of the nation. However, a need for devising special measures for promoting national integration was felt only in 1961, when the first major riots took place involving the Hindus and the Muslims. The then Prime Minister Pandit Nehru convened a conference of the chief ministers and other state and the central ministers in June 1961 to consider the question of national integration. The ministers were of the opinion that there should be an attempt to check the disruptionist tendencies which are opposed to the very basis of the Indian Constitution, and there was a need to have some kind of body to promote national integration. So all minority communities concerned also were to be taken up. So gradually what happens is that after several meetings, the NIC was constituted in 1962. And the first NIC, National Integration Council, consisted of the Prime Minister, the Union Home Minister, the Chief Ministers of all the states, and also prominent leaders of major political parties which were present in the which had members in the parliament, either in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha. The chairman of the National Integration Committee of the Indian National Congress was also involved. The chairman of the UGC was also involved, and then the Commissioner for Linguistic Minorities, Commissioner for Scheduled Caste, Scheduled Tribe. Now, as you know, the commissioners have been replaced by National Commission for Scheduled Caste. The NIC was again revived by Indira Gandhi in 1968 after another spate of communal violence took place in Eastern India especially, and in 1968 the objective of the NIC was declared as the foundation of it was like I read it, the foundation of our national life is common citizenship, unity in diversity, freedom of religions, secularism, equality, justice, social, economic and political, and fraternity among all communities. So NIC reiterates its faith in these values and dedicates itself to their achievement. Then in 1980, there was attack on the scheduled caste by the caste Hindus, and there also the NIC was constituted to deal with this issue. So the 15th meeting, which has been the latest one of NIC, took place in 2011. So while in the initial period NIC focused on the problem of communalism, over the years it has shifted to its focus on interstate disputes and combating regionalism and secessionist tendencies, especially in the 1990s. Recently, its focus has been fighting all forms of terrorism and extremism. So what are the measures which have been taken? Education is seen as the most important means for bringing national integration. For example, 3-language formula, revision of textbook, fostering the national feeling through teaching of Indian history, community singing of national anthem in the schools, scholarship for students going to other states for education, and such other recommendations have been made from time to time in order to foster the interstate integration, the community people meeting the other community people in different parts of India. The right to instruction in mother tongue at primary as well as secondary level, especially right of minority language groups, have been reaffirmed on several occasions and conferences. Mass media like print, films, radio and literature have also been used for this purpose. Various government departments, central as well as state, have been organizing a variety of programs for promoting national integration, arranging an exhibition giving account of unity and valor displayed by the Indian forces in war, interstate youth exchange programs, celebration of National Integration Day, issue of commemorative postal stamp, coins, translation of literature from one regional language to other. All these measures have been taken over the period to promote national integration. However, as NIC asserts, promotion of national integration is not merely a task of government. It is the collective responsibility of all the citizens, politicians, educationists, artists, writers. Everyone has to pitch in order to ensure national integration and to strengthen it, consolidate it. Let's discuss that national integration is a process whereby people living in an area develop a feeling of a sense of community. It involves subordinating one's linguistic, religious, regional or cultural identity to the national identity. So various implications can be attached to the integration: national integration, territorial integration, elite mass integration, value integration, and integrative behavior. And there we can see that the assimilationist tendencies have to be there, but then there should be a principle of unity in diversity, and we have to fight out the sectarian kind of tendencies, sectarian feelings which come up as a result of communalism and the linguistic parochialism or regional parochialism, because they cause disintegration in India. NIC has an important role to play in this process, and we have to consider that NIC has to be more active, and there has to be a conscious effort on the part of the political class to not to try to use all these social cleavages for their political gains. Only then we can have a better kind of integration in Indian society. As we saw, let me conclude this module. In this module, we discussed how the national integration can take place only when the people submerge their regional, linguistic, religious identities into a national identity. When they prioritize their national identity rather than prioritizing their regional or cultural or the linguistic or any other identity. In this module, we also refer to the literature which has been provided by the modernization theory, political development theorists in the 50s and 60s. These theories came up from the liberal viewpoint, studying the societies of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And these modernization theorists and the political development theorists, they argued that nation building, or to inculcate a feeling of belongingness to one nation, was very fundamental to the process of development or process of modernization. So nation or nation building, or the feeling to belong to the one nation, that was considered absolutely necessary for the further development of the country. And in a country like India, as we saw, that this kind of territorial disparity, the disparity between the elite and the masses, linguistic disparities, the communal religious disparities, all these disparities had to be done away with. Only then we could achieve national integration. Otherwise, national integration was going to be a great challenge for a country like India. In this context, in this module, we refer to the establishment of National Integration Council, because there was such a great concern about the Hindu-Muslim divide, about the communal bloodbath, communal battle, you know, the people killing each other in the name of the religion. So this was a great challenge. So National Integration Council, which has been set up for dealing with this. Then there have been other measures also, like the language issue. There was an anti-Hindi agitation in the South India, especially in the then state of Madras. So the three language formula was adopted. Then there has been a problem about the inter-caste disparity and the kind of the charge of exploitation, historical basis of discrimination and exploitation. There also we find that in India, the successive governments have adopted and implemented various policies of affirmative action as well as protective discrimination to give the people a feeling of belongingness to one nation. In our preamble also there is a word called fraternity. Fraternity means the brotherhood, common brotherhood. So when you refer to the right to equality or right to fraternity, there are equality of status and of opportunity, all these factors they emphasize. Or you refer to the fundamental duty in the part 4A of the Constitution of India, you talk about the equality principle in Article 14, right to equality and equal protection of law. All these constitutional provisions as well as the successive government policies over the last 7 decades, they underline this. In fact, they underline the need to have a national integration in India, and that is a great challenge. And one can say that reorganization of the state, the adoption of the three language formula, or giving the special rights to the minorities, or the giving space to different languages in the 8th schedule, and also considering that the dialect communities or the linguistic communities can be accorded their own state, and also kind of autonomy status being provided under the Constitution 5th schedule and 6th schedule. All these asymmetrical provisions of the Constitution, all these measures one can refer to geared to the need to have a national integration in India, which would be incorporating, accommodating the diverse demands and aspirations of the different communities, different social groups, different economic groups. Our economic developmental model also has been emphasizing on the need to achieve a national integration so that different parts of India can develop in an equitable manner.